we go. Good evening, everybody. I welcome you to the first meeting in the new year in 2022. This is also the year for the Rotary Convention in Houston, hopefully. We will see. So first, it's time for our weekly meeting, and we will start with the bell, right? Here we go. So do we have any happy news this week you want to share with us? Yes, Scott?
It's just a funny question. It's like, I don't know, we've made it this far. Everybody's actually present and looks reasonably healthy. That's good.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. That's a big gift as well.
I was happy to see Scott's picture from Aerostitch. Had a nice little write-up about Scott.
I got a free t-shirt out of it too.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Writer of the month.
Yep.
Okay, writer of the month. Where you saw that picture, Rob?
Oh gosh.
I think I got a text message or an email from Aerostitch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have an email newsletter. I can find the URL and slap it in the chat. But yeah, that was kind of fun. And I've been using their suits for decades. Mm-hmm. Since I grew up, I'm a Minnesota boy, right? I'm kind of no stranger to their stuff.
I use their stuff a good bit. I've got a couple suits and live by it.
They have nothing for me, really. It's all too short. I'm sorry to say that. So this is the reason why I couldn't buy anything from them. Yeah. So
well, they'll custom tailor, but yeah.
But I found something in Germany. The problem with the motorcycling in everywhere, it doesn't matter, it's in America or somewhere, especially for the women, that, you can get the short stuff, but if you are a little bit taller like me, no chance. And it's really hard to find something what really fits perfectly for women. They have under 10% riding women. This is why they paying not attention, for the needs of the ladies, but it is tonight. So I will introduce you to our speaker tonight, Anjay Stewart. Did I say that right, Anjay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I saw him a couple of months ago on a Zoom meeting on my husband's club, Memorial Spring Branch here in Houston. And I thought, that's really fabulous. And I will invite him. And he said, yes. I'm very thankful for that, because I'm sure he's very, popular. And he's born in England, by the way. This is what I was reading. He's born in England and in a military family. And then he came, I think you were studying in the University of Texas, right? And you get some more graduations, and then you wanted to be an astronaut since you was a kid, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you like to play guitar, but you have no time for that.
A little bit of time. I haven't played as much as I'd like recently, but yeah. They keep me busy.
Yeah, that we have in common, by the way.
Totally understood.
So I will give it over to you, and you have half an hour for speaking. That's what we do normally. And then we are open for questions, whatever, a little bit talking about it.
Okay. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Great. And let me see. Am I able to? Yeah, there it is. Share screen. So let me go ahead and share my slides. Mm-hmm. There we go. And everybody can see those?
Yes.
Perfect. So before I talk about kind of what I've had a chance to do, I like to start by taking everybody on kind of a virtual journey to the planet Mars. So like any journey, we've got to start somewhere. And for this journey, I'd like to start us on the International Space Station. So if you are an astronaut aboard the ISS and you look out the window, this is your view. This is the view out the cupola module on the ISS. And you get to look out those windows and you get to see all of the planet Earth unfolding beneath you. You get to see sights, from what I understand, they're kind of unmatched, for at least from what I've heard. And So we think of space being really far away, but if you're aboard the ISS, you're probably not as far as you think you are. In fact, depending on where you are in your orbit at any given time, you might be pretty close to home. And so I like to show this photograph. This was one that was taken from the space station. So one of the astronauts had a zoom lens on their camera, and they floated over to one of the windows, pointed the lens, and took a shot. And the reason I like to show this photograph is because right here in the middle is the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. So in this photograph, the astronauts spend a lot of their time training at JSC. Most of them live in the area. So in the housing areas around the center there, the astronaut that took this photo, their house is probably in this photograph too. So even though you're in space, you can very literally see your house from here. But as I said, this isn't the end of our journey. This is just where we're starting. We've got a long way to go. So let's keep on going. This was a photograph that was taken during the Apollo missions. So we're far enough away now. We're not quite to the moon yet, but we're far enough away that now, instead of just seeing a horizon, we see the whole globe of Earth. So we're getting farther away, but even here, we still see a lot of familiar sights. In this photograph, you can see the coastline of Africa. You can see the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. If you look close enough at the bottom, you can even see the coastline of Antarctica down there. So even though we're getting farther away, it still looks like planet Earth to us. So let's keep on going. This one's a famous photograph also taken during the Apollo missions. This one was called Earthrise. And so the astronauts, this was taken aboard Apollo 8, and they were orbiting the moon. And as they were orbiting, they came over the limb of the moon and they saw the globe, they saw Earth. And the moon's kind of the farthest we've ever sent people right now. So this photograph essentially represents the farthest humans have ever been from their home planet, but it's still close enough that you can still see those familiar coastlines, those familiar weather patterns, the oceans. It still looks like home. This is just the moon now. I promised Mars. So let's head on out to Mars now. So this is a photograph from the surface of Mars. We've never sent anybody to Mars yet. So the way we got this photograph is robotically. We sent robotic explorers to Mars first. This particular shot was taken from the Curiosity rover. It was on the surface of Mars for about a year, and then the flight controllers at JPL told it to point its camera back up at Earth and take a photograph one night. And if you're looking for it, it's a little dot right there. It's a long way from Mars to Earth. Whenever we send people there for the first time, it will be the farthest humans have ever traveled from home. It'll be a very long mission, potentially up to 2.5 years. It will be performed in very small, cramped spaceships with a small crew of people. So if this sounds very stressful, sounds like the astronauts might get homesick, you're absolutely right. And this could be something that weighs heavily on the astronauts during the mission. And before we send astronauts out to Mars for real, we want to make sure that we understand the challenges they're going to face and have ways to help them deal with these. So it'd be nice if we had some sort of kind of practice Mars here on Earth that we could kind of use to study that. You know, if there was sort of a way we could practice these before we did them for real. Well, it turns out we do. And this is where I come in. So on the photograph on the right, the one that looks like it's in a warehouse, that's a facility at the Johnson Space Center that we call the Human Exploration Research Analog, or HERA for short. And that's a facility where NASA puts volunteers basically to act like astronauts for a period of time. So they go into this facility and they live in there like astronauts would, nowadays up to 6 weeks at a time. I've actually spent 2 weeks in this facility. So I was in one of the earlier shorter missions, simulating a mission out to an asteroid, while NASA studied myself and my team for the effects of isolation, psychology, team coherence, that sort of thing. It sounds very stressful, but it's also a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it enough that I decided to go ahead and do a second mission as well. And that's the photograph on the left, the one that looks like it's kind of out on the rocks. That is the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation. That's a facility that at the time was run by the University of Hawaii with help from NASA. And there they did longer duration studies. So it's similar studies to what they were doing in Hera, but much longer. So instead of spending 2 weeks in there, I spent a whole year, 366 days simulating a mission on the Martian surface. NASA has a name for these sorts of facilities. They call them spaceflight analogs. And the point is they're trying to get them to model some aspect of spaceflight kind of as closely as they can, so they can either train astronauts or study astronauts and astronaut-like volunteers to understand kind of the effects of spaceflight. And they go to great lengths to make it kind of as realistic as you can. There's certain limitations, you know, we're still here on Earth, so we're not floating in 0G. And for our missions, it wasn't a sealed atmosphere, so we were still able to breathe the air. But this is, again, a shot of high seas. And if you look, even though it's in Hawaii, it's on the northern face of Mauna Loa on these very geologically young rock lava flows. And even though it's here on Earth, you look out there, it's very desolate. It looks like you're on another planet. So they go to great lengths to at least kind of help you suspend disbelief to some extent and make it seem as realistic as possible, so that the effects you experience are as close to the real thing as possible as well. See, I see a chat. There we go. Okay, so these analogs, they're part of sort of a bigger group of facilities that are called isolated and confined environments. These are the only words I've got on these slides. These are kind of my notes here, but these isolated and confined environments, it's not just these analogs. There's actually a whole host of facilities we have here on and off the Earth that fall under this kind of umbrella as well. Places like this International Space Station, Antarctic research bases, submarines out at sea, and they all kind of have sort of characteristics that they sort of share that make them kind of unique from normal living conditions. So they tend to be a long way from inhabited areas, so they tend to be very remote. Again, you can think of the space station up in orbit or an Antarctic research station, or high seas up on the side of that volcano. They tend to be difficult to enter or leave. I mean, if you think of the International Space Station, to get there, you have to get on a rocket and get sent there on a spacecraft. To get to Antarctica, it's a series of cargo flights going through Christchurch, New Zealand. So it's these are places that aren't easy to get to typically. And the reason they're so far away and so difficult to get to is often we're placing these environments in places that are hostile. Again, the vacuum of space or the extreme cold of Antarctica or the underwater environment for a submarine. These are places that are sort of actively hostile to life. And if there wasn't a habitat around you protecting you, it would be an environment that would be very literally trying to kill you. And because of that, you're usually confined in a very small environment, and getting to go outside is rare if it's possible at all. And whenever you do get to go outside, you have to wear some sort of protective gear to protect you from that environment. So maybe multiple layers of clothing for an Antarctic researcher or a spacesuit for an astronaut. And then the last one, it's a little different. The others were kind of related to the environment. This one's sort of a more sort of crew makeup sort of thing, but facilities like these tend to be inhabited by artificially composed groups. And what I mean by that is we're not selecting people because they're friends and family. We're usually selecting people to be there to fill a certain role. So for the Antarctic, it might be a leading researcher. For submarines, we're selecting trained Navy personnel. For the space station, we might be looking for the world's best spacecraft pilots. So we're picking people who are very good at a job, but they're not necessarily used to working with each other. Especially for facilities like the South Pole, where they might be meeting for the first time whenever they arrive at the pole. And so these are people who don't necessarily get along with each other at first, or naturally get along with each other in day-to-day life. And so all these together, the confinement, the sort of extreme environment, the distance from home, the working with people who may not have been selected based on psychological reasons, all of these kind of mesh together to create some unique stresses. And again, these are definitely stresses that are present for a Mars mission, and NASA wants to understand these because these are the sort of things that can affect sort of crew performance and can get in the way of success on a mission. I've made it sound kind of very desolate and sort of very lonely up there, but whenever you do go on a mission like this, either simulated or a real space mission, you're usually there with a crew of people. And these were the crews I spent time with. So on the left side there, That was the crew I spent 2 weeks with at Hera at Johnson Space Center. So that's me on the left, the flight engineer for the mission. Next to me is Linda Royburn, and she's in the Air National Guard, originally here in Texas, but she's since relocated to Florida. And she was one of our mission specialists. So that's kind of NASA's terminology for sort of a scientist astronaut. Next to her is Dr. Shayna Gifford. Shay is a doctor in St. Louis and was our other mission specialist. And then in front there is Ethan Good, and he's a flight controller here at Johnson Space Center. Also has Antarctic experience as well prior to coming to NASA. So he was our crew commander. And so going from the 2-week mission to the year-long mission, and for this mission, we actually had an international crew. So starting on the left in the red shirts here, that's Cyprien Verseau, and he hails from Paris, France. He's a biologist, so he studies bacteria and how they might be beneficial to astronauts going out into space. Christiane Heineke's next to him. She's a physicist, and she was our chief science officer. She's from Germany, and she's our chief science officer. And she was there to kind of make sure that we were fulfilling all the tasks we needed to do for NASA's research. Carmel Johnson hails from Montana. She's a soil scientist and was our crew commander for the mission. Tristan Bassingthwaighte next to her is also from Montana. He was studying at University of Hawaii at the time in architecture. So studying specifically space architecture. So making places for the astronauts to live that aren't just safe, but taking sort of crew comfort into account as well. So making a place that astronauts would actually feel comfortable living in too. Dr. Gifford was on this mission as well as our health and safety officer. And then finally, that's me on the right there as the chief engineer for the mission. So making sure that the habitat was in good working order. So the science officers on the mission didn't have to worry about the facility so much. They could focus on the science that they were working on. And what I like to stress here is whenever you see these people in these photographs, these were the only people I interacted with face-to-face for the duration of these missions. So the folks in the red there, those were the only 5 people I spoke with face-to-face for a whole year. And I know with pandemic and sort of isolation that I'm sure y'all have experienced, y'all understand how stressful that is. If you've been kind of locked in your house with family members, you understand kind of some of the stresses that come along with that, even with people you're very close with. I like to take a few minutes I see there's some things in the chat. I'll answer everything at the end during the Q&A, so I'll come back to that, but please absolutely keep posting there. But I do like to talk about the habitat a little bit because it's such kind of a unique environment, especially the high seas habitat. One of the things I like to point out is whenever you're on a real space mission or even a simulated one, things take on sort of a different sort of value. And so here on Earth, if we run out of something, we have money, we go to the store, we can spend that money and get whatever we need. There aren't any stores up in space though. So you can't just go to Walmart and buy what you need while you're on orbit. So money doesn't really have any value in space. What does have value are the things that are keeping you alive. So for a real space crew, that would be things like your power, your water, your air, and your time. These are the things where if you are short on one of those, it very much affects the flow of your day. For us, we're here on Earth, we had plenty of air to breathe, but at high seas, being up in that mountain, we were off the grid. And so we did have limited power and water. Water was shipped to us sort of once a month. And so we had a limited 1,000-gallon water supply. So we had to conserve that. We got down to about 6 gallons per person per day, and that's for everything. That's 6 gallons for personal hygiene, 6 gallons for drinking, 6 gallons for food preparation, 6 gallons for keeping the habitat clean. So we were taking some very extreme measures to kind of get down. We'd be reusing sink water as mop water later in the week. We were even taking what are called Navy showers. So instead of having a continuous stream of water when we were showering, it was a second of water, turn the water off, put on the soap, and then 1 minute of water to spray down. So we were doing some very extreme measures to conserve that small amount of water we had. For power up on the mountain, our main source was solar. And so we were very affected by the weather. If it was a cloudy day, what that meant was maybe we weren't going to get to have enough power to cook a warm meal that night. or during our exercise, maybe we didn't have enough power to run the treadmills. In the middle of winter, when the days were already shorter, if we had a cloudy day, what that meant was maybe we couldn't start the heater whenever we woke up in the morning. And so, those were the days where we'd maybe spend an extra few minutes in bed huddled up under the covers, and then would wear extra clothes throughout the day. So, just these kind of small changes had the ability to really impact how a day would go for us on simulated Mars. Let's see. So we've got all these resources and we've got to keep track of them. So just like a real spacecraft, we had sensors measuring sort of the amounts of everything we had. So we had sensors and readouts telling us how much power was in our batteries, whether or not the solar panels were charging, how much water we had left. We even had monitors measuring the quality of air in the habitat. And we did have a mission control team watching over these things as well. And enough of these sensors were sensitive enough that they could tell when we were working out. Our carbon dioxide sensor, whenever we were working out, would breathe more heavily and they would see the carbon dioxide spiking. But speaking of that mission control team, it was actually very hard to work with them. And this has something to do with a physical limit on communications between Earth and Mars. So I've got a couple of pictures that kind of illustrate this. So Earth and Mars are both orbiting around the sun, and they kind of vary in distance from each other. Whenever they're as close together as they get, it's 55 million kilometers. It's kind of hard to visualize, but the more important thing here is light traveling at the speed of light goes 55 million kilometers in 3 minutes. The reason that's important to us is because we use radio waves to communicate back and forth, and radio is just kind of like light. So it takes 3 minutes for a signal to get from Earth to Mars whenever they're close together. Whenever they're on opposite sides of the solar system, that time expands to 22 minutes. So imagine what a phone call like on Mars would be like if you're trying to call Earth. Let's say you've just woken up first thing in the morning on your Mars base and you pick up your phone, you call Houston. You say, hey, Houston, this is Mars Base 1. We're just waking up for the day. How's Texas today? And then you have to wait for 22 minutes. So those 22 minutes go by, and then Earth gets your signal. The flight controllers in Houston, hear your signal and they say, well, it's kind of unseasonably warm. It's cold front came through last week, but it's really not feeling like winter yet. But hope y'all are getting sort of more wintry weather up there. And then you have to wait another 22 minutes. 44 minutes have gone by, and all you've done is said hello to each other. So conversations that would normally take minutes here on Earth all of a sudden take hours or even days on occasion. Communication back and forth between Mars and Earth is very difficult for that reason. It's not all bad. It's very challenging. For me, this was the biggest challenge in the mission. We did simulate this. So for Hera, we started in real time, but we added a couple of minutes of delay every couple of days to make it sort of seem like we were getting farther and farther from Earth. For HI-SEAS, we just use a constant delay of 20 minutes throughout the entire mission. And again, for me, this was sort of the biggest challenge, was keeping in touch and keeping communication with both mission control and friends and family back home too. It's very difficult when you can't just pick up a phone and solve problems. But that being said, it's not all bad. We also found it very much helped us focus while we were up there. It's very easy to get things done whenever you don't have a whole bunch of distractions, or you can't go on the internet to go watch YouTube videos. It keeps you very focused, takes away a lot of distractions. So very challenging, but there are some benefits to it as well. Talked about the habitat, but I'd like to talk a little bit about life in there as well. What's it like? And so what I can say is kind of overall, a day in space, a day on Mars is very similar to a day here on Earth. You eat breakfast, you go to work for the day, somewhere in there you take lunch, at the end of the day you eat dinner, have some time to yourself. Works on Earth, turns out it works up there pretty well too. And of course, whenever we send people to Mars, we are sending them to do a job. They're not just going to go and live and kind of hang out and do nothing. They're going to go and they're going to have work to do while they're there. And the work they're going to be doing was similar to ours in that the work was focused on science. And so our job while we were on this missions were to do science as well. A lot of tasks similar to what the astronauts do, but ours had kind of the additional sort of dimension that instead of us doing science on the environment around us, we were the things that science was being done to. So there are various ways we did that. We filled out lots of sort of surveys asking us about our mood and our interactions with our crew members. But sort of the parts of the science I like the best are what we call flight-like tasks. So doing the same sort of tasks that astronauts perform, working with some of the same tools that they work with as well. The idea being that if we react a certain way in our simulated environment, that may predict what astronauts will experience whenever they go up to Mars for real. So they want to know, as we're doing these tasks over and over again, are we getting more efficient? Are we getting faster? Or are the stresses starting to set in, and are we starting to slow down over time? Again, NASA wants to know these things so they're ready for them and have countermeasures in place to be able to help the astronauts through these stresses. You've seen a few of our photographs for high seas. We have simulated spacesuits on. Hera being in that warehouse, we spent the whole 2 weeks in there, stepping outside. We would have gone from being in what looked like a space environment out to all of a sudden looking like we were in a warehouse. So we spent our whole 2 weeks in there. But for high seas, the benefit of being up on that mountain is we could step outside in simulated spacesuits and it still felt like we were on Mars. And this was an important part of our mission. Whenever we send astronauts to Mars, we don't want them to just live in that dome until they leave. We want them to get outside and dig in the dirt of Mars and study the planet that they're living on at the time. And so again, a lot of our tasks were similar to what they would be doing. We were getting geology assignments from Mission Control every few weeks that we would have to accomplish. A couple of my crew members had experiments they were running outside. And just like your own home, every once in a while, something outside would break or get damaged, and we'd have to go outside in the spacesuits and repair that damage. So again, doing the same sort of things that astronauts would have to do. And in suits as well, simulated spacesuits. So even though we were outside, we were still always kind of encapsulated in something. So it never truly felt like we were outside. We were just inside sort of our own little capsule while we were out there. Again, I talked earlier about how there are no stores on Mars. So if things break, you can't just go out and buy a replacement. You have to fix it yourself. And there's a lot of other things you have to do yourself as well. So whenever you see astronauts on TV, usually they look like they're having a whole bunch of fun. They're flying around in spacecraft and they're wearing spacesuits and they're going out on EVA and taking pictures of each other and doing what looks like a lot of fun. But the part that doesn't get televised so much is, okay, they do all the fun stuff, but they still have to do all the chores that they have to do here on Earth as well. And for astronauts on the ISS, doing those in zero G while things are floating around, so which can make things a lot harder. Whenever I give this presentation to school groups, the joke I like to make is whenever your parents are making you clean your room, they're not doing that to be mean to you. They're doing it to teach you how to be an astronaut, because astronauts have to clean their rooms too. And the same thing for us. So for Hera, we had housekeeping tasks assigned throughout our schedule. For high seas, we set aside Sundays as our cleaning day. And so we had to clean and do all the other sort of not so fun things as well. And if you can imagine it, we had to do it up there. We had to learn how to cut each other's hair too. So every little thing you do on Earth, we had to do up there as well too. And again, we had to repair things whenever they broke as well. The top left photo there is one of our stove tops, and it had broken. And that's me taking parts from another one that had broken and trying to get a working stove again so we could cook that night. Speaking of food, I like to spend a little bit of time talking about the food because it's the thing that's kind of so different. Whenever you're there, this sounds kind of odd. It starts out being very new and unique and different, and you know it's going to be, but after a while you fall into a routine. And eventually you find yourself waking up on a Wednesday morning and saying something like, oh, it's Wednesday morning, I better go put my spacesuit on because Wednesday is the day we go out in the spacesuits. And I understand now, I'm now away from the mission and back in real life, just how sort of absurd a sentence that is, but you get used to being there. But the food was the thing that was just different enough that it reminded me I was doing something unique. So for the 2-week mission, because it's at the Johnson Space Center, we got to eat the same food they eat on the ISS. So a lot of freeze-dried, packaged thermostabilized foods. They're made to last a long time. Whenever these foods get packed, they get packed in Houston, sent to Florida. They've got to take a rocket up to the space station, and they might spend a couple of months before they get eaten. And some of these foods later on may have to last 2 years before astronauts eat it on a Mars mission. So it doesn't sound very appetizing. You add water to them. A lot of these things, if they're freeze-dried, the top right's a freeze-dried one. It starts out feeling like styrofoam, and you add water and it becomes food kind of right before your very eyes. Again, doesn't sound appetizing, but I will say is they've had a few years to get it right. A lot of the food's actually pretty good now. I actually kind of enjoyed most of what we ate there, though a couple of minor exceptions, but overall the menu was actually pretty good. The one thing you kind of missed is because you're adding water, vegetables become kind of mushy, so you miss kind of the crunch of a fresh carrot or a piece of celery. So that was Hera. At High Seas, because we were a university project, we kind of simulated space food. We had cans of freeze-dried ingredients. You can get these for storm shelters and things like that. And so we had a full kitchen, and with these ingredients, if you put them together and got creative enough, you could make a decent meal out of them. Bottom right there is Thanksgiving dinner, and that is a real pumpkin pie. Canned pumpkin lasts a long time. Spices, flour, water, all these lasted long enough and were shelf stable, so we can mix them together, bake them, and get a pumpkin pie. That turkey, though, was a little different. So that was a can of turkey chunks that we added water to, added flour to, shaped it into a turkey, and baked it. Not as good as the home cooking. I kind of say it was kind of like a turkey flavored chicken nugget, but whenever you get to experience this sort of mission like this, you're willing to put up with some creative culinary choices, to put it that way. And it honestly wasn't that bad. I still enjoyed it. The other thing, because we were there for a year, we had time to grow some food as well. Not a lot, because growing food takes up a lot of room, but it was sort of a nice treat every once in a while. And that bottom left was our first harvest. So we had cherry tomatoes, 6 of them, little cherry tomatoes, 1 for each of us. And for this was a formal meal. I'm talking place settings, shirt and tie, formal meal, as we all sat there trying to get as many bites out as we could out of our little cherry tomato, because it was the first fresh food we'd had in a couple of months. So I've talked about hardships, I've talked about work, and for sure there's a lot of work and stress and hardship there, but astronauts are just like real people too. They need downtime, time to kind of pursue their own interests as well, and we did the same. For Hera, since it was such a short mission, most of our entertainment there were books and movies. For High Seas, we got to take a little bit more stuff with us. I found my crew members were the kind of people who like to learn. So we had crew members learning languages, people learning how to play instruments. Cyprian down there, he's got that ukulele. He had never played the uke before the mission. He bought that the morning the mission started. He bought that at a guitar store in Hilo. He had never played a uke before, and I can say the first couple of weeks in that dome were a little bit painful, but with enough sort of dedication, by the end of the mission, he was a pro at that thing. So a lot of that sort of thing going on. We also had group activities. So in the top left, me and Tristan were kind of just spoofing that photograph for fun, but we did have board game nights every Wednesday night. Behind Tristan, you can see a screen back there. And so Friday nights were movie nights. And we even had a crew member who knew how to salsa dance. And so we took salsa dancing lessons while we were in there for part of the mission too. And then the last slide I've got here, just some extra photographs from the missions, some milestones. So again, whenever you're in there, you're in this very sort of static and unchanging environment. It can be really hard to keep track of time. So you spend a lot of time focusing on holidays, because if you, for example, if you celebrate Christmas, it makes it feel like winter. Or if you celebrate 4th of July, it starts to feel a little bit more like summer. So it helps you kind of mark the passage of time. The other thing we did, though, is we would take photographs at certain milestones. So every month, at the beginning of each month, we took a photograph, and we also did it on certain milestone days. So day 100, day 200. The top left there was our photograph from day 300, where we kind of tried to dress up as Spartans with things we had around the room and spoof the movie 300. Tristan helped with the graphics for that. The other thing, I really didn't have a whole bunch of chance to show you, but some of the facilities in these habitats can be really small. So the bottom left there is one of our bunks for Hera, and I call it a compartment really, because you have enough room in there to lie down and sit up, and that's about it. And we took that on our last mission day. We had been planning it, and we wanted to cram all 4 of us into one of these compartments to get a photograph. But I see I'm about at the end of my time here. And, you know, I could talk about this stuff for hours. I mean, it was literally over a year of my life. So I've kind of just given you a small slice, but I'm certainly happy to ask questions. I want to know what you guys want to know about. So I'm certainly happy to answer questions.
Thank you. First of all, it was very interesting. And the first question what popped up in my head was over the time, why Mars is so interesting for NASA or for the astronauts?
Why is Mars so interesting? It's, I think, out of the planets, there are kind of 2 planets that are kind of close to Earth. They're not exact copies of Earth, but they're kind of closer to what we are. And those 2 planets are Venus and Mars. Out of the 2 of them, Venus sort of has runaway climate, runaway greenhouse effect going on. So putting people on the surface of Venus would take a lot of engineering at the moment, wouldn't be feasible. But Mars, we could very easily put astronauts on the surface of Mars, study that planet. So it's sort of, after the moon, sort of the next feasible target that we can put people on. And because it's a terrestrial planet similar to ours, it gives us sort of the chance to study a planet that's like ours, but hasn't been touched by human hands. So it's kind of viewing a planet in its more pristine state. There are key differences. For example, we understand that Mars had water on its surface at some point and doesn't anymore. And the reason that's not there, that's an interesting question that we want to answer. We want to know where that water went and why it went away. Is that something we need to be concerned about here on Earth? So I think there are important scientific questions that we can answer about Earth by going to Mars and studying a planet sort of in its pristine state.
Thank you.
See, I see a couple of questions here. Let's see, have I seen The Expanse? I haven't seen The Expanse, and I've heard it's really good. I haven't had a chance to watch a whole bunch of TV. I have met one of the actors at a conference, and the parts I've seen, I know they've put a lot of effort into making it. You know, it's not a perfect representation of space flight, but they've tried to make it at least kind of close to realistic and at least believable. So I think it, you know, it veers more towards the hard sci-fi than, say, Star Wars or something like that. So what I understand, they've put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it. So that's why I asked.
Yeah, it's on my list of things to watch. I just need to actually sit myself down and watch.
There was another question. We have the it looks like we will, it's planned that we have the International Rotary Convention in Houston this year in June from 4th to 8th. And my husband is the chair for the host events, and we have planned one host event on the Space Center for sure for 3,000 people. And one question was from one of the members here, because they all want to come to Houston. If you are there on this time, I don't know, did you heard about something that Rotary comes up to the Space Center Houston?
I had heard that, I think, because I get a chance to speak with a lot of Rotary groups. Turns out if you spoke to one, your name gets out there. And the previous one I spoke to had mentioned that it was coming to Houston. So y'all are the second folks to mention it to me.
Okay. So of course, everybody would be happy to see you there, but I don't know who picked the people, you know, for this special evenings, you know, but they are all excited, of course, because they make the long tour, you know, that nobody else.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited too.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you here. I know I've worked in other parts of aerospace before. The thing I like about NASA is we get to show people what we do. You know, if you work in military space, there's a lot of sort of parts of that are hidden. And I don't know, I think what we do is really cool, and being able to kind of open up the center and show y'all what we're doing. That's, I love that y'all get to see this too. So we're looking forward to having you guys come and visit.
Yes. So do we have any other, we have enough time to, you know, ask him.
Yeah, I saw the joke. I hope there's no teenagers in isolated, confined environments. You know, there's a lot more now that we're going through the pandemic. And I used to give this presentation before the pandemic, and you know, it was a little bit of a different experience because you know, a lot of people hadn't been through that sort of isolation experience. Now almost everybody has, and so it's we're all kind of Martian astronauts now in a certain sense. Everybody's gotten at least sort of a taste of it. You know, the nice things are we've got the internet, but even just kind of some of the stresses of being at home for extended periods of time, seeing the same people over and over again, these are the same sorts of things that astronauts are dealing with too. So we now, I think, have a lot more teenagers in ICEs than we expected a couple of years ago.
Good point.
But I think it's different.
I have some information that doesn't mean anything except to me. My nephew lives in Colorado Springs, and he is friends with Mark Vandehei, who happens to be up in the air right now. And what's interesting is occasionally I get to see a picture taken from space and some of the communications between Mark and my nephew, Dan. And for me, that's pretty exciting.
So he's in communication, like talking back and forth with him as he's up there.
I'm not sure it's verbal, but they definitely exchange emails or something. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, if I'm lucky enough, I get to work with the crew occasionally, admittedly as kind of their pin cushions for them to practice blood draws on. But you know, if he's up there getting to actually, you know, talk with one of the astronauts, even kind of over email, that's awesome. That's cool.
He sends pictures back of where my nephew lives and some of the other scenes around. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that.
Oh, this is the one Jim says, excellent presentation. And we hope we meet you in Houston this summer.
Let me absolutely, please keep me posted on that. I mean, you know, things will definitely.
I sent you the actual day over, you know, that you know when we are going there, what time we go. I think it's a group from 3,000 people, members, Rotarians, would come over to the Space Center. But right now they are, you know, adjusting a lot of the events because, you know, of the pandemic. It's you cannot plan anything. So we're planning in a fog because you don't know what's on the end, you know.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm sure it's not different. You know, you have the same issues, you know, over the year now, like everybody else, you know. So this is what I meant, you know, it's that kind of isolation what you have, but right now it's not only the isolation what we have, it's about you cannot really plan, you know. Our problem right now is really we're planning and we don't know it's happened or not, right?
Certainly. I understand that. Right now so aside from the NASA stuff, I'm also a pilot and an officer for the Civil Air Patrol, and I just got put in charge of Civil Air Patrol flight ops for. They have the Space Exploration Educators Conference here next month, and we give flights to some of those teachers. And I've been made the person to put that together this year, with the caveat that they could cancel that. But right now I have to go forth and plan it as though it's still going to happen. So it's, as you said, it's a fog, you know, it's for that one, we're coordinating with the Air Force because we're flying it off the Air Force Base as well. So, and things change on a daily basis. So
can you throw your identification up, your address, how to contact you, that sort of thing? Can you put that
let me give you my email. I'll actually put it in. I'll put it in the chat here. There we go. And that's probably the most reliable way to get a hold of me.
Cool.
I check that one on a daily basis. So.
The first time when I came to Texas, I couldn't even go on all the spaces in Space Center because I was only a German. Now I can go because I'm a American German.
Yep. So you've got if you've got the American part now. I know they have a lot of restrictions. It's back before the pandemic, we were able to actually give our own tours to people, but that was one of the restrictions we had to work around. At the moment, we still can't give personal tours at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I know that. Yeah, we wanted to do that last time and it was not possible.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's so horrible right now. Yeah.
If it helps, I mean, at least I know Space Center Houston, they do at the moment have the tours going on site. So, you know, I was actually out on site earlier today and saw one of the trams going by. So they've at least got some level of tours going on at the moment. So,
but I'm sure it's also interesting when you go over Arlington Field and you fly out from there, or you go over there, because they have a very nice museum as well, you know. So we have a tour to the museum as well in Arlington Field.
So are y'all going to get a chance to tour the Lone Star Flight Museum as well?
Yes.
Perfect. I love their collection. It's all flyable. So
yeah. So who's a pilot from us? Me not, for sure. So, but do you know people from the Rotary Club and Space Center?
I don't actually think I've spoken with them yet. My first Rotary was actually across town. I want to say, wasn't Katy area, was it? I think it was more Sugar Land area. But I don't actually think I've spoken with the like Seabrook or Clear Lake area group yet.
Oh, Spring Branch for sure.
Yes.
That's how I saw you. Yeah, that was fun. Yes, so thank you very much for coming out for us. And you know, it was also a long term, right? Because we talked about month when I asked you first if you would do it, and you said yes. So and then we had no speaker appointment, so it needed a while, and so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. A little bit of the background there. Part one, we've been working around two things. One of them is the Artemis launch, and right now we were looking at February. That's moved to March, but back when we were planning this, it was possibly going to be in the air right now. So that was one of the things. The other thing is I've talked about two analogs. There is a third analog that I'm currently signed on as crew for, an 11-day mission, and I think it was originally supposed to run in November. I think they're looking at next month for that at the moment. They're still trying to get the facility together and ready to go. So I thank you for your patience while we were dealing with both of those.
Oh, you're welcome. Very welcome. And hopefully we see you in June. It's from 4th to 8th is the convention. And the exact date I will let you know. And then hopefully we can see you there. That would be awesome.
Yeah, please let me know. If I can make it out, I'd be happy to meet everybody. That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so you can join us. We have still a little bit meeting until 7 o'clock.
Okay, I'll mute, but I'm happy to stick in here for at least a few more minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I think that was pretty awesome, finally. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice. Great.
It's a different presentation I saw before, but this is awesome, really awesome to understand a little bit more, and special what I thought with the isolation. I can not imagine, you know, even not with COVID, because we still can go out, we can still communicate, but when you're on the mission and you are there, you know, for nothing, then it's pretty hard. So I hope you like the Germans, Andre. Because they're all in mission in the International Space Station too. I think there's another German right now.
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to. I'm just still getting back over the break, so I need to go look up the crew again on board. But I believe you're right.
Yeah, they are in Darmstadt located, and this is not far from my own hometown. So I worked in Darmstadt for a while. So all the Germans coming from the European
ESA, European Space Agency.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I've driven near there before. As I work in biotech, and so we have an office in Darmstadt. I spent a lot of time over there.
Mm-hmm. So there's a world small, right? Because Scott is normally sitting in California. In our club, it's very, you know, you see one is in Maryland, one is in Florida already. Chris is in South Carolina, right, Chris? And
North Carolina.
North Carolina. And, you know, so we are all over the place in this club. So that's the really unique thing for us. Because the only passion we have is motorcycle. You are not a motorcycle, right?
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, I know a lot of people who do. I just haven't had a chance to get to it. It was my big one's been guitar and flying. Those are the ones that take up most of my time.
Yeah, it's everything is time consuming. Everything what you do outside, also you have to make a decision. We have one from the Rotary Club in Space Center, Daryl Smith. He is a guy, he likes to fly, and he's have a motorcycle too, and he's on the bicycle. So whenever, I ask him, because we organize here every year a ride against polio to raise money for the polio vaccination, and he's with us all the time, and maybe we could do it on the airplanes, but I don't know so many people with airplanes, to make a flight to raise money for whatever project.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say, being a Civil Air Patrol officer, is you have to be careful what you say around them, because if you express an interest in something, invariably you'll get an email that night saying that you've been assigned as the squadron officer for that particular thing. So you have to, after a while, realize, oh, I better not say anything, or I'm going to get another assignment here, and I've already got like a half dozen. So
that's just like the Army.
Absolutely.
Who was that? Yeah, so yeah, it's really nice. Yeah. So right now, the riding is in Texas perfect, but not on the rest of the state. So California, I'm sure too, right? Or is it too cold, Scott, already for riding?
Out here?
Yeah.
I was out on the bike yesterday I was out on one motorcycle picking up parts for another motorcycle yesterday.
So California is good to go as well.
We're still riding out here.
But I heard from Rob today that they got some snow, so I'm sure he will not go out with a bike. No. And David, how it's with you? I think also, right?
We did our last ride Sunday, so.
Oh, here we go. That's nice. Yeah. Here we go. Oh, John, can you hear us right now?
Yeah, I switched to my cell phone.
Okay.
I actually downloaded Zoom. I've got a brand new cell phone. I've had it for like 7 hours now.
Okay.
And I was successfully able to download Zoom and get on the meeting.
Yeah, but honestly, it's a clear video. The voice is awesome, so yeah, you're good to set up.
I don't know why my laptop didn't give me audio.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's also a setting thing like last time with Keith, there is down there, when you look at the mute button next to it, it says what speaker they have to use.
Yeah, I got that a number of times, and
nothing happened.
I tried everything.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I hope.
Not to worry.
Did you heard anything, or did you missed the most?
I didn't catch a thing. It was all muted.
Oh, okay.
I think it's all on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. We will have a video from that. I don't miss the button today, so you can see everything after the meeting. That's nice.
Did you see the comment from Rory that it's 3 inches and still snowing up there?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's not doing any riding today.
No.
And he lives there by choice.
Yeah.
And what is with Otto? Otto is in Canada already. So Otto, what's happened in Canada? I'm sure they have a lot of snow. He's muted and I don't see a picture at all. So maybe. Yeah. So. Yes, he's not there.
Yes. I live here by choice because in the summertime I have the motorcycle and I have a lake.
Okay. If anybody from up north have something like a snowmobile or whatever, I like that things also.
Back in Minnesota, that's a thing. Yeah. Not out here unless you're up in Tahoe or something.
Yeah, you don't need it in California. But Otto, he's not silent anymore. So Otto, could ride in Canada?
No. If you can hear me, no. The answer is no. Well, certainly not anywhere except maybe in Vancouver. But I was in Vancouver on the coast, and they had very slushy snow, so it would be very, very tricky to do that. I have maybe 2 feet of snow, and I think we're expecting another 10, 15 centimeters, so 3, 4, 5 inches coming.
Kind of hard to hear today.
Well, it's probably on the wrong system here. But
okay. Okay. But thank you for joining us today. I know it's the first week in the new year. Can you imagine? It's unbelievable, right? So 2021 goodbye, and 2022 we was working on the convention, I think, the last 4 years, and we always hoping the day will come, and now it's very close. It's only a half year today, actually. What do we have today? Yeah, today actually we are half year later. We are in the middle of the convention. Can you imagine that? It's only 6 months in the future now. So now it's really running the time, I'm sure, for that.
I also have technical issues. So today's Wednesday, so at noon my time, and at 4 p.m. you start your meeting. So I've got to take all my computers and everything apart here, take it to the meeting, and put up there so I can play the meeting and host people, and then bring all my equipment back, put it in my office, and reassemble everything, and try to get all the settings back again. And unfortunately, I didn't. So I still don't have the video.
But right now you are clear from the voice, very clear from the voice.
I did change the microphone.
Okay, that's the reason why. So Happy New Year to Canada.
Yeah, same thing for you.
So who want to join us or to lead us, not to join us, join and lead? Here we go. There's Otto. Do you want to lead us in the 4-way test, Otto? The things we think, say, and do?
Is it the truth? Give me some
fair to all concerned.
Fair to all concerned. Will it, Bill?
Goodwill.
And better friendship. And?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Is it going to be fun?
Will it be fun?
Yes, indeed. Way to go.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for the meeting. Thank you, Andrzej, for joining us. And we will keep you informed over the convention.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all for having me today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all this summer. That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You all have a good one.
You too. Bye, guys. It was a nice meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.